This week on the Storycraft Society, we're going to be adding elevation changes, river valleys, and nameplates to our 3D crafted map for our Dungeons & Dragons world. Let's jump into it. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Garmin. It's Thursday, so that means another episode of the Storycraft Society. And this episode is going to be part 2 in our series on how to craft a 3D world map for your D&D game. If you missed episode 1, you should definitely go back and check it out. In that one, we talked about how to set up the frame, a really important part for getting it so that it's not going to warp and get you messed up that way. We also talked about how to shape our main landmass and then do our coastline. So that's setting kind of a nice foundation and stage. And like I said in that episode, I think that this is a lot closer to crafting a piece of art than it is to crafting a piece of terrain, even though the skills are very similar or maybe exactly the same. But with that said, what are we gonna be doing today? We're gonna be starting with elevation changes. This is a really neat way to make sure that our map has a little bit of extra 3D qualities. We're gonna be doing river valleys. We're gonna get all our rivers and lakes all cut out. That's gonna be great. The last thing that we're gonna be doing is starting our nameplates. Now, we're not gonna get those finished, but we need to get them in place so that while we're placing our mountains and our forests and all that stuff, it doesn't get in the way of where those nameplates will go. So that's a lot to get covered today. So I'm gonna stop jibber jabbering and we're gonna jump into the first thing, which is getting the elevation done. So when we're looking at our nice map that we have going here, we have the coastline all cut out and we have that all feathered up so that it looks like, you know, nice sloping coastline. We have all of our rivers and lakes marked so we know where they're going to go. But the next thing is figuring out elevation. So when I pull my reference map here, we know that this area is gonna all be elevated. In my world, this area is called the Valley of the Phael, and it's kind of this big, high up valley, a little isolated from the rest of the world, and it's where a lot of the wood elves live. So there's gonna be an elevated section that kind of comes down and around here. Then also the mountain range coming over here is kind of coming down. So this is gonna be a big elevated area as well. So I'm gonna pull out my foam core here, and we're actually gonna use the same technique that we used for the rivers and lakes, where we're gonna take a pin and punch out the general shape of what we need for our elevation changes. We'll get those cut out, and then we'll start getting them glued down. Step is just like before, actually. All we're gonna do is pull out our Eileen's tacky glue. We're gonna slather some glue up onto the backs of these and then get them weighed down and glued in place. Let's go. So the next step is we need to get all of the elevation changes carved up like we did the coastline. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to mention about this. The first thing is just take your X-Acto knife, go around the edges and cut just like we did the coast. Don't overthink this step. After you do that, it should look really similar to the coastline, just foam on foam instead of foam to the masonite. And that's fine, because then the next step that we're gonna do is we're gonna sand off all of those sharp edges, again, just like we did with the coastline. The thing to remember here is these transitions, unlike the coastline, are gonna get mountains and forests and all kinds of things added to them later that will just smooth and simplify these transitions to make them look a lot more natural. The only place that you really want to focus your time and attention is where rivers, flow down the elevation changes. That's going to be the only place where it's super, super noticeable. But once you have that done, the elevation changes should look a lot more natural, a lot more flowy, and then you just need to make sure that your foam is 100% dry before you move on to the next step, which is going to be getting our rivers all cut out. We have merch!
The link is in the description below.
Rivers are interesting because what you're going to do is take your X-Acto and you're going to cut them out just like you did the coastline, which is easy enough. But where they get tricky is now you have to get this all out. So what I've found works best is, of course, once the glue is dry, you cut on either side and then just use your X-Acto to push up and out. It gets a little tricky down in these thin areas, but as long as you got a good cut, it should just pop out just like that. Then just work your way up the rest of the river. Unfortunately, where this gets tougher is when you get up towards these upper edges. Everything gets tighter, so therefore it gets harder to get the little scrappy pieces out. And so what I found you do is just go careful and get as much out as you can. And then when you get to these upper areas here, you can take a pencil and just widen them up that way. All right, and so that's stage one of working on a river. So when it's done, they're gonna look like this, which is really nice, but that's only part one. Part two for me is where these really start to come to life. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my X-Acto and just cut off just the sharp edge of the top of the foam on either side of the river. That's gonna be kind of a starting process so that now it's gonna look a little bit less, angular, but the trick is you don't wanna go all the way down. If you go all the way down to the bottom, it's gonna end up making this not look like a thin river, but it'll end up looking like a much wider section of something. So you just wanna just barely take the edges off. I'm gonna do that on both sides. And then now I want this river to look even more natural. I wanna turn it into like a little river valley. And the way I'm gonna do that is by pulling out my sandpaper again, and I'm gonna just start running this easily up through where the river is. This is a process you don't wanna go too fast, because if you go too fast, you will rip your foam, and you don't wanna do that. But if you go nice and easy, just slow and steady the whole way up, you will get a really nice, smooth transition and this awesome looking river valley that will really make that particular part of your map just look super good. At least I think so. Nameplates are up next. So with nameplates, there are approximately 150,000 billion different ways that you could do this. I mean, there are just so many options when it comes to doing iconography and nameplates on this. For this one, I'm just gonna go for something a little more simple. So obviously the first decision you have to make once you get to this stage is how many things on your map are you going to label? So on my full continental Tresina map, I decided that I wanted to do key landmarks and just capital cities. So obviously that works better for a continental map than it does for a regional map like this. You could name literally every little forest and every road and every bit of water. The more you do, the more complicated later steps get, and also the more you do, the more cluttered your map gets. So for this, I'm gonna go very, very simple. Maybe more simple than I should, but I'm gonna be happy with it, I think, in the end. I'm just going to name the capital city in the region and then all of the smaller cities. That way, if I show this map to my players, they'll know where all the population centers are. And then if they say, well, what's that forest? I can just point it out and be like, oh, that's the Phael or whatever it would be. Also, a map like this is really good for more exploratory things where you don't want your players to know where everything is. On a map like this, there is no way to hide. Once you put it on, it's there. With that said, let's talk about how I'm going to get my nameplates and things on here. All right, so here are the 5 locations that I'm going to include on my map. There is going to be the capital city of the Kingdom of Marindance, which is Marindance. That's going to be located right there. The next one is Arduray. That's kind of the population center of where the wood elves are. That's going to be right there. The next is Dunbyterum. That's going to be the population center for the Kingdom of Byterum. That's over here. Then Brenoston, which is way up and out here. That's the southernmost of the 6 cities, which is the region that goes off that direction. Then we have Sidericolto, which is the kind of like inland trade center that Marindance works through. They ship most of their goods out to sea, but when they have to go through land, they go up to Sida. So then what I know that I need to do is put a mark on here for all of those. Now, as my city markers, I have these buttons, and they are going to be really nice because all I have to do is open them up. Let's see. There are these smaller ones, which I'm going to use for the cities. And then there are these larger ones, and that's what I'm going to use for Marindance down there. So it will go something like this. And then the next part will be, I'm going to take these names, I kind of already have them printed out here, and I'm going to glue them onto craft sticks and popsicle sticks. Of course, Marindance will be the one that goes on the larger stick, and I'm going to cut those out and then be able to place those all around to be my nameplates. So I'm going to get those cut out. I'll just use this kind of as a guide to figure out how long I need to cut them. And then once I have that, I'll come back and start placing them around the map. So I just got all of these cut out, and it is worth the mention. These are just placeholders. These aren't going to be the final name tags. These are just going to give me the location on the main map where things go. As long as these all are the right size for the script, then that means that I'll know when I go to make these later, I'll use these as templates, and I'll be able to fit the real actual nameplate down into the piece. So now what we're going to do is take these, and we know that Marindance will go somewhere down there like that. Arduray here, Dunbyterum, Brenoston, Sidericolto will go right there. So now we're going to get all of those kind of placed in place, and then I will cut out the location for all of those. Time lapse, time. But with our temporary nameplates on there and our temporary icons on there, we are another step closer to getting this thing finished. I really, really love what we did with this week's episode because now this thing is starting to really look like a map. I think the coastline kind of was there last week, but now we're really starting to make progress. The elevation changes gives it a nice 3-dimensional depth. The nameplates obviously show where things are, so that makes it feel a lot more like a map. And then the rivers, I think, are my favorite part. Those river valleys show up so well on a map like this. And we're only halfway done. When we start adding things like the mountains and the forests and paint to this thing, it's just gonna get crazy, crazy cool, crazy fast. So thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying this series, definitely leave this video a like. If for some reason you watched this video and you didn't watch the first one, you should definitely go back and watch that. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, please do that. It doesn't cost you anything and it goes a long way to helping the channel's metrics out. That's just awesome if you could take the time to do that. And lastly, share this video with a friend that you think would enjoy it. Word of mouth is so crucial for small YouTube channels, so that would go a long way to helping me out as well. All that said and done, it is now time for my favorite part of the video, which is the craft of the day. Let's jump into it. Welcome back to another craft of the day, everybody. This week is going to be a really fun one. Spencer Magleby is actually the one who sent it in, so thank you so much, Spencer. And I'm so stoked about this one because honestly, it looks exactly like my Red Brand hideout. As you can see with this one, we have the whole Red Brand hideout. Actually, he went a step better than I did, and he actually did the cages. I appreciate that detail a whole heck of a lot. Here's a zoom in on the first area where you come in. Now, he set his up more like stairs going down, where I had mine more like stairs going around, but both of those are really cool. Love that. Here's a better kind of side view so you can see a little bit more details. Oh, it looks like there's even a sarcophagus up in the other one. That's really awesome. Let's see. There's the beds. Those look so great. I like the gray. That's actually really awesome. I like the little rope bridge as well. There's a better look at those iron cages. I wonder if those are toothpicks that he used to make the iron grating. Those look really great. I would actually love to make a set of those for myself. That would be really cool. All right, and this is the big one. When I was flipping through the pictures, I saw this way of like organizing all of your dungeon tiles. I just think this looks so good, and it's such a great idea. All right, that's all I've got for this week's. Spencer, you killed it. This is so awesome. Thank you again for being part of the Craft of the Day series. If anyone out there would like to have their projects featured on the Craft of the Day segment, you can just tag us on any of the socials. That's Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Links to all those will be in the description below. Also, if you don't have any socials, you could always email us at thestorycraftsociety@gmail.com. Can't wait to see any projects that people would like to send us. And until next week, all I can say is, I'll be seeing you.